to chat so it's not distracting.
All right, welcome, welcome. I know there's some folks that were in the waiting room. Thank you for your patience. It is 11:59 by our time, so we'll give folks a minute or so to grab their lunch and get out of their meeting that they were just in, that they're so happy to be leaving at this time and catch their breath, get a bite to eat and spend some time with friends. Beautiful Friday here in suburban Philadelphia. Matt, where are you? You're in Boston, aren't you?
I am. If
Nice.
anybody's more familiar with the area, the Boston suburbs, I'm just west. So Metro West is the area, but
Nice.
Framingham more specifically.
It's a wonderful
My
area.
parents live in Hopkinton.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yes.
that's just right around the corner. That's cool.
Small
Yep.
world.
Hit me up when you come and see them.
Mm, that might
Grab
be
a
soon.
cool. Yeah, grab a cup of coffee, cup of tea. Love to.
Yes.
Nice, nice. All right. Welcome, welcome, my friends that have joined us. It is I'm such a stickler for time. Like 12:01, I start. It's gonna happen. There it is, 12:01. And we begin. Welcome to another exciting episode of Meet the Author. And we are not at the Pyramid Club today. We are on Zoom, which has opened the doors to authors that do not live in the Philadelphia area, but also have amazing stories to tell. So, welcome if this is your first time. We have a very relaxed and fun atmosphere. Because we're not in person, I didn't want to lose the love. So we have some fun that goes on in the chat room. So do not hesitate to share information about yourself in the chat. My good friend Lysandra is going to encourage you to participate in the chat, and will also highlight anything that touches her heart or mind or tends to be like a big learning point. Lysandra, why don't you tell us about you?
Sure. Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday. My name is Lysandra Cheatham. And first and foremost, I am a passionate learner. Love it, love it, love it. Curiosity is my superpower. So I am excited to be here and learn from Matt and learn about his work and his message for us today. And I'm also in management consulting. So I work in spaces with leaders, teams on leadership development, learning and development, and change management initiatives. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm joining from Philadelphia, where it is sunny and beautiful right now.
Yes, it is. And I know you're only about 20, 25 minutes from where I'm sitting. So we are enjoying the same beautiful weather. So let's talk about some things that are coming up for Meet the Author. We have Karen Buxman is going to join us on August 15th, noon on Zoom. Her topic is Lead with Levity. So my sense is we will probably laugh a little bit with Karen Buxman. She's a wonderful speaker and author. So we're happy to have her in August. September 25th, in person at the Pyramid Club. We have an author panel with folks that have written books about career management. And one of those people is me. So my book will come out September 12th. That will be the book launch, September 25th. Yes, Matt. Oh my God, raise the roof because you know what it takes to get a book out. Oh, wow. Yes. So I hope people will be there. We are looking at a couple things that are not actually scheduled yet, but we're looking at maybe a Philadelphia author panel in October, and we will, I'm pretty sure, have a women's author panel in November. So we'll get those dates to you as soon as we can. Let me see what else is going on here. Is there anything else I need to share? I don't think so. I never share anything about myself, so maybe I'll share. So, this is not my full-time job, though people think sometimes it is. I wish this would be an awesome full-time job. But I have a company called High Five Performance, and I do work with companies who want to create places where people want to work. So I have had the pleasure of working with a number of organizations who have made the best place to work list. Some of them have not made the best place to work list, but could because they're awesome. So if you have managers that need training, leaders that need some love, I am happy to help you with that. All right, now we're ready. So I always introduce the author by how I got to know them. So I am a firm believer in continuous education. And I signed up for a course, and it was called the Wealthy Speaker 5-Day Challenge. And it was intended for people who have a business, or at least a part of a business, where they make money delivering speaking. And I have a good friend who I'm really trying to get into this business. And I thought, if I sign up, he'll sign up, and then we'll both take this course together. Well, I'll tell you what, it was good. It was good. It was $99. It was really a bargain for what you got. But the biggest takeaway I got from that was new friends. And Matt is one of those new friends. I enjoyed his comments and his company in the program, and we followed up with each other afterwards. He has a book, so of course I'm like, oh, I would love to have you be part of Meet the Author. So not only does he have a wonderful book, Financially Capable, a friendly guide to building whole health wealth, he also has, I think, an amazing life. I think your life story is amazing. I think you have just a good, beautiful energy and soul to you. And I hope that we not only talk about money and wealth, but also getting to know you better as well. So Matt, welcome to Meet the Author.
Thank you for the warm introduction, Teresa. It really was serendipitous to meet you because it's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I'm grateful to be here today. So I do have some different slides that we can share. And as I share them, I really want to invite people to participate. I'm
Okay.
a huge fan of participation. I'm a huge fan, ultimately, of people receiving value from this time. And I appreciate those that are here live investing the time. You could be doing 1,000 other things. As Teresa said, in Pennsylvania, it's beautiful. In Boston, it's beautiful. Summer is just upon us. And thank you. Thank you for being here. If you're watching after the fact, thank you for watching this. Thank you for seeing this content. For those who are here, as a special opportunity, if you'd like, if you're here live, email me or send me a link on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to send out a copy of my book if you'd like. So just as appreciation for you showing up and spending this time together. So Financially Capable, a friendly guide to building whole health wealth. There's, wow, like that's just a mouthful. And my cover designer was like, are you sure you want to go with that? It took a while to get it, but yes. So this is a brave space. And I want to highlight that as I invited those that are here live into conversation and participation. Money is a sensitive topic for many, including me. It's emotional. When we think just about the math, the dollars and cents of it, the 1 + 1 = 2, we can agree. When it comes to money, what the best thing to do with $2 is, if we have 5 people, there's at least 10 different opinions. So more than just a safe space, this is a brave space. It takes bravery to put ourselves out there and even ask a question. And I recognize that and want to, again, invite people. This is a no shame zone. This is when we talk about personal finance, it's personal. And there's a lot of emotions, thoughts, feelings, and keeping it personal is critical. So I appreciate your bravery and being here and the questions that will be asked. So 4.7 billion. What? That's a huge number. So the question is, why did I write this book? I wrote this book for many different reasons. One being, there's just such a huge need. $4.7 billion is the weekly estimated amount that employers lose because of employee financial stress. It's huge. It's significant. Employees are stressed, and maybe you felt it. I felt it. But we think about the cost of inflation, political matters, and tariffs, and this is not a political conversation. It is a reality, though. We're stressed about many different things, and finances is towards the top of that. And as a result of that stress, we worry about just making ends meet, and that worry bleeds over into the workplace. So with 4.7 billion, that's huge. On the flip side, financially healthy employees are 10 times more likely to be focused than those who are not financially well. So there's a need in the workforce and all over the place, just across the board, to be financially well. I also wrote it because I couldn't get on stages and speak. And I love interacting with people. But over the past few years, in 2018, I started really getting sick and felt some different effects of what was diagnosed as bile duct cancer, and went through COVID to receive chemo and radiation, and by grace, a liver transplant. And because I couldn't physically get on the stages and interact with people, I was in the hospital quite a bit. This is a picture during that time. I put my energy into writing a book because I knew that the problem of financial stress still existed. And I had these different ideas in my mind. And some days I was intubated and couldn't quite write. But at the other days, I could sit up and type away on my keyboard, and eventually was able to write this book. And I'm grateful to be able to talk about it today. So 77% is such a random number, but a very specific when it comes to dealing with financial stress. I'm going to read a little bit of the book as we go through our conversation today as well, because this is, after all, a book club. So in my introduction, I wrote, have you ever felt financial stress? If so, you're not alone. In fact, you're very much like me, your neighbors, and many others who have experienced challenges with just trying to get through life. A new study from Capital One found that 77% of Americans feel anxious about their financial situation. Under the effects of stress, people struggle to save and budget. They feel less in control and are more impulsive in how they spend their paycheck. And that was all specifically from a nationwide survey. We feel stress as a result of money. And that stress is real. Maybe you felt it, maybe not. Financial capability. You can see it's not the exact word and title of the book, but very related. So financially capable, to be financially capable, and the field of financial capability is rooted really in what we'll call a three-legged stool. So the first leg that we'll describe is the financial environment, the environment in which we live. And the book, Financially Capable, is broken into three distinct sections that focus on each of the three, we'll call them legs, of this stool to help us understand. So our financial environment, understanding access and opportunity in a turbulent world. And this chapter covers a lot. Certainly there's financial regulation, rules and guidelines and all of that stuff, the FDIC and bureaucratic, I don't want to say nonsense because it's also important. When we think back to history in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of disparity, financial disparity, where women couldn't go down to the bank to like get a loan or do basic things that now we take for granted. That was our recent past. That is part of the financial environment in which we live. The chapter also includes things like systemic racism, which is rooted in history, research, and data that shows things like Exclusion Acts, redlining, specific laws and practices that actually prohibited some people, oftentimes based on the color of skin, prohibited them from participating in the economy. So our financial environment, and really considering it, is important. It affects us, whether we realize it or not, because it really is about helping people to be included in our economy, in the workforce, and to be overall just healthy and well and have access and opportunity. The second section, more than touchy-feely. Like sometimes when we think about financial emotions and feelings, and it can get a little bit woo-woo for some. And I'm all for woo-woo. One of the things that kept me going through my cancer treatments was yoga. And I don't want to say that yoga's woo-woo, but not just the physical exercise, because I needed the wall just to hold me up, but the emotional connection with other people who are going through similar circumstances, in this case, cancer patients, helped me just to get up off the couch and move. And that was good for my mind, and that was good for my body. That was good for my spirit. So when we think about the psychology, attitudes, behaviors, and emotions of money, they're real. They are real, and they affect us every day. So this particular chart and kind of breaks the rule of having too much on one slide at one time. But the idea of the subtitle of whole health wealth comes from the idea that the different dimensions of wellness are interconnected and impact each other. So when we think about where we work, how we feel when we're at work, is it mentally stimulating or not? And maybe we're out of work and retired and we're at home, and whether or not we're stimulated intellectually impacts our physical, spiritual, emotional health. Our social lives are directly connected to our physical, spiritual, emotional, occupational lives as well. So finances is one of these domains of well-being. And that's my background and expertise. I also know through my own life and through my own journey that finances doesn't live alone on an island. In many workforces, maybe you've heard the idea of things being siloed. And that can happen whether it's in government, in the private sector, for-profit, nonprofits, things are siloed. So one particular function happens over down the hall and the other at the opposite end of the building. And when they meet, kind of scary to think about that even happening, never mind what would happen if they did. So breaking down those barriers within our own lives to think about building whole health wealth is an important part of this book. But in over 100,000 people that I've worked with, coached, and counseled, I've found that oftentimes the journey of building wealth is an emotional one, not just who has the biggest pile of cash, but it gets at the question, what is success? What does it mean to live a life that we're proud of, that we're happy with, that we're excited to go to? What is a life well lived? And that's different for each one of us. But they're important questions to ask. Sometimes it's scary. And we think, well, I don't want to do it. I don't want to go there. It's difficult. Maybe that's just me and some of my friends. But sometimes I just am frustrated and just want to scream. Sometimes I just want to hide and I don't want to deal. The head in the sand method is employed by many, myself included. This is a picture of me in high school. So many years ago, when it talks about just emotions and thinking about different feelings and different thoughts and ideas and the touchy-feely parts of dealing with money, that includes addiction. I'll read another quick section here. Chapter 8, page 71. It says, "My sweet tooth has motivated me like a kid in a candy store. I'm driven out of my way for a delicious dessert. There's nothing quite like the unbridled giddiness caused by the neural reward in the prefrontal cortex when the taste of sugar triggers dopamine and hormones that tell our bodies, this is good." The chemical structure, C12H12O11, aka sugar, can be incredibly addictive. And I have an addictive background. My addictions led me to overdosing while I was in high school, shortly after this picture was taken on the screen, and lived as a teenager homeless. Bounced around on couches, slept on the street for a little bit, and was challenging and difficult. And that's part of my life in working towards whole health wealth, because without having clear, sober thinking and living in deep, deep depression, when we lack hope or a vision for a better tomorrow, we tend not to make the best decisions today. And when we think about really what it means to live our values every day, it really is about love. It's finding love and forgiveness for ourselves and those around us. Sometimes we're mistreated. Sometimes we have trauma in our backgrounds, and all of that influence, again, not just our financial well-being, but all domains of well-being. So when we think about the third section, the last section is about the nuts and bolts, the fundamental knowledge of financial literacy. And there's a bunch in this chapter. I want to make sure as well that we have time for Q&A. So I won't read a particular section from the nuts and bolts, but it covers not just a budget, which I call the dirty B word in the book, because we don't necessarily like to talk about how many bills we have, how much we have to pay, how much things cost, all of the different sacrifices we have to make, because that's not fun. We don't want to sit and talk about that. When we reframe our mind, and what part of the chapter does is help us to rethink a budget, not necessarily just as a chore, a task, and something we want to do, because let's be real, when that's the case, we don't want to stick to it. Reframing a budget as something that really prioritizes what's most important to us and allocating our resources towards what's most important to us. It goes back to living our values every day, thinking about walking in love, thinking about making sure we spend time, energy, and money on the things that are most important to us and not flitter it away on other stuff. So my encouragement to those listening is dream big. Maybe you're towards the beginning of your career and just feeling some of that initial stress of interest rates being crazy high. How will I ever buy a house? And the salary that I'm making isn't what I want. Or maybe you're on the retirement age or place on that spectrum and thinking about, how will I spend the rest of my days? I've been through the career, I've earned the money. Now, how is it that I can live life to the fullest? I invite you, I encourage you to dream big. I'll stop sharing this and have some time for more interaction, more conversation. I can talk and talk and talk, but this time is not about me. I want it to be valuable for those who are participating and even listening in the future. Ooh, you're on mute, Teresa.
You. That's because as you were speaking, there were fire engines going by my office, and I'm like, oh, mute, mute. Although I don't think people can hear them anyway.
I appreciate it. That's okay. Sometimes my voice is like a fire engine to some, and they're like, is he going to stop yet? They might have considered that a pleasant interruption.
It's one of the blessings and curse of having an office that is 2 blocks from the fire station. 2 blocks. So if we have a fire,
You're
you have
safe.
my favor that I'm pretty
Good.
safe. But I loved your message. I love that you weave in love. So post this call, we need to talk about love in business, because that's part of my message as well. And I think it's so important. Um, One of the things I read in your bio is that you retired before age 40. How did you make that happen, Matt? How did you make that happen? Because there was a period of time where you were homeless. So
Yeah.
you went from homeless to retiring at age 40. What were things that transpired to allow you to do that?
A lot of things. And I suppose I'm working on reframing even the idea of retiring, and what that is, what that means. I
Yes.
think of it as different chapters of life, because as long as I have life, I want to live it to the best and
Sure.
ultimately live with purpose to be able to give the best of myself in service of others. But it was a crazy journey. So I starting from towards the, we'll call it the beginning, the picture that I showed of my high school ID,
Yes.
where I went to school in a rural area. And my parents thought that they were going to shelter us there. My family was, well, my parents were very blue collar. My dad was an iron worker. My mom was a bus driver, and did the best to sacrifice to have food on the table for myself. And I have two younger brothers. And the irony of sheltering somebody by taking them to a rural area is that statistically, teens are much more likely to get into drugs and drinking in rural areas. There's nothing else besides having a party in the field in the middle of nowhere. And for me, there's epigenetics is a fascinating study of how different decisions and behaviors in the environment affect our DNA and literally rewrite our DNA. And that's passed on from one generation to the next. So when I think even for me in my history, and there's other data about addictions, that there is a greater likeliness for me to fall into
Mm.
addiction and struggle with addiction, because it's in my history. It's in the previous generations, alcoholism and a variety of things. So for me, that was a lot of just poor choices
Yeah.
that led ultimately to my parents giving an ultimatum. I couldn't stick around and be a negative influence and risk and danger ultimately. So they said, change, sober up, or leave. And I was like, sober up? That's like not even an option in my teenage brain. Like, why
Oh,
would I do
wow.
that? And left. And that's where I bounced around. And so a lot of it, I know it's different for everybody and the reasons why we get into different circumstances. For me, a lot of it was just poor choices. So that being said, I eventually a house where I was living, we sold drugs out of it and was raided by the police frequently. I was still a teenager, so friends would come to our house after school and either buy from us or just hang out. And the police would stop them down the street and say, "Hey, you can't be there. Don't go to that house. What's your business there?" And raid and search their car and raid the house as well. I knew that it was a matter of time before death, jail, or insanity
Mhm.
would really come my way, and experienced a taste of all of the above.
Yes.
From the extreme death side, I mean, I overdosed. It was really just while I was still in high school, by a thread, literally by grace, that I survived that one. The nurse called 911 and they rushed me to the hospital and was there for a while and survived. So how did I count? So all
Right.
that's some
So there's this
background, like
huge
what in the world that doesn't like, so I moved away from that area to be a different person, to escape that, to not be in the clutches of death, jail, or insanity. Anybody who's ever struggled, maybe listeners can't relate to drugs and addictions. There's some psychologists that say every person at some point in their lives deals with addiction. And for some, maybe it's
some of some sort.
of some sort. Yeah, it's a
Yes.
process addiction. It's a matter of our mindset that I write in my book. But whether it's just tuning out, trying to not feel the pain of everyday life, maybe it's like gambling and going to the casino or scratch tickets, different for everybody. So I had to work through that before I could change, because even though I moved from Connecticut to Massachusetts, I brought my baggage with me. My emotional baggage was everywhere I went. And ultimately it was a friend who cared enough that kept on just reaching out to me. And for me, I have a strong faith. And at that time, he was part of a Bible-based drug recovery program. And at first I was like, no, man, I just want to get high. Like we grew
Oh,
marijuana in the basement. And I wasn't looking for change. But he didn't give up. He saw a brighter future for me that at the time, as a 19-year-old, I wasn't able to even like envision for myself. But over time, and especially when sobriety came, by grace, was able to get through some of the just shackles that held me down in bondage and were a prison, both physically with the addiction, but also within my own mind.
hmm.
So that was an important first step. So when somebody asks the question, well, what's the first step in building whole health wealth? Well, it's taking really a clear reflection of who we are deeply, where we are, our environment, our situation, whether that's job, career, otherwise our finances, but being able to be sober minded. And that's different for everybody.
Mm,
For me, it was not using. For others, maybe it's not gambling, maybe it's sex addiction, whatever that it might be. It's
right.
oftentimes something when we want the goal, whatever it might be, we can fill in the blank for each of us. When we want the goal, but we're struggling to try to reach it. And every time we try, we feel just knocked back down, one step forward, two steps back. Being sober minded is critical. And for me, that made all the difference. It's now
Yes.
been 25 years sober and has been, I mean, it's hard even to put into words the difference that that's made.
I love
So,
that, being sober mind. So I have a little acronym. We'll talk
yeah,
later because there's
yeah,
so
yeah,
many things
I
I
look
want to
forward
share
to it.
with you. But I have this acronym called LUCID. And
Hmm.
it's built on this, Matt, because I believe you need to have a clear head. Like no nothing clouding your brain, just letting your
Hmm.
brain be itself, but each letter means something, and the first one is of course love. L is the love, but being lucid is the foundation of whatever great things you're going to do and the good life you're going to have. So this resonates deeply.
That's
Oh my
fantastic.
goodness.
I love that. I love that. And I look forward to talking more about it because
Yeah.
now in my mind, all I can think of is lucidity and thinking about what the rest of the letters in that
It
acronym,
is.
but it all
It
begins and ends with love.
it does.
Well,
It
no,
does.
because that's not how
And
lucid is spelled, but
but
it begins with
but it
love.
but it starts with self-love. Like there
Mhm.
has to be an appreciation for
Mm.
my life has value and meaning and purpose and all of that. Um I did you have it sounds like there was some kind of epiphany that shifted your thinking. So one, did you have some kind of epiphany? And two, did you have a vision of what good looked like for you? Could you see in the future what good looked like? So epiphany and vision.
Thanks for asking. So Epiphany, I would say it really started by getting into, for me, the Bible and that study group and people who cared enough about me more than I cared for myself. And I think it goes into, like you were just sharing with the lucid model,
Yes.
being able to love ourselves, being able to have grace for ourselves. Self-loathing is deep and impacts so much of my life in the past, but for others around me as well, where I've seen I'm not worthy. And as a result, seeking external validation with whatever that it might be.
Yes.
And I've worked a lot in different homeless shelters, domestic violence shelters, and places where um, people are just looking for safety and security physically. And it extends as well, emotional safety and emotional security as well. Um, but seeking that external validation is huge. I remember having a specific conversation with a woman who was just working her way. She was a single mom, had a child in a family shelter where I was working with her. And she was expressing just in getting spending $200 a month on her hair and nails. It wasn't a
Mhm.
conversation just of budget, but it was a conversation of self-worth and value
Mm.
because the $200 represented way more than
Sure.
the bottom line or the dollars and cents of it. And as I was sharing in kind of that quick intro and slides, money is just an emotional, deeply psychological factor for so many.
Yeah.
And thinking about our self-worth and seeking that external validation really is critical because for me, and answering your short question, epiphany and vision kind of questions, I did not have a vision for the future. I didn't
Interesting.
like, I didn't think I'd live to see 20 years old. I mean, I had overdosed and knew I was living a risky life. And I mean, so many stories of close, we'll just call them close calls, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
literally feel alive by grace because my own stupidity has gotten me into more trouble than I can even count. Um, Literally, some of the memories have been recounted to me after the fact by other witnesses and people who were there. So as far as vision, the statement that I made earlier, when we fail to have a clear vision and hope for a better future,
Yes.
particularly when we're in, whether it's depression, whether we're in those difficult, dark psychological times, it's difficult to almost impossible to have a vision for a better tomorrow on our own. And
Yeah.
with addiction, as of all different types, and getting with money too, there's a balance between intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. And the
Yes.
research shows that sometimes when we don't have the internal self-control, regulation, and vision for ourselves, that sometimes we just need somebody to give us, we can fill in the blank for each one of us. Sometimes I needed a quick, swift kick in the butt to get like off the floor, literally. Slept in lots of floors, sleeping bag, and that was about it. Sleeping bag and what could fit in a trash bag of clothes and a drum. I've always played percussion and loved music and played in bands, but that's some other stories for another time. But
Wow.
no, I didn't have a vision, especially at that time, because I really
Interesting.
believed that I wouldn't survive to see 20 years old. So to imagine a life beyond that for me, at the time, I was incapable. Other friends, other mentors, people who were in my life, and I write this in my book. The power of that, and I'll just read it really quickly. But
Sure.
relationships influence and forge our personal and professional lives. Isaac Newton said, if I have seen further, it's by standing upon the shoulders of giants. I'm incredibly grateful for the many people who have let me stand on their shoulders and helped to forge the person I am today. And first and foremost, thank you to God. I am sustained by grace. And I mentioned many people who have played a role. And when I lacked vision, others had it and helped impart
Yes.
to me a vision that I could begin to imagine and begin to formulate, that I could become unstuck.
Right. So you eventually had a vision, but this is really, it's reaffirming for me what I've learned from my friends who are part of AA.
Hmm.
And the mantra is always one day at a time. So I think that's where you have to start, because visioning is beyond what you can even see, but you can see one day at a time. So that really kind of resonates for what I've learned from
Hmm.
my friends that are in recovery with
Yeah. And I
this.
think that extrapolates to people who may not have an AA or NA or SA or all of the anonymouses, but maybe have something that would be much more considered okay by societal standards.
Right.
Um, but ultimately are feel maybe just stuck, unable to change
Yes.
current patterns of behavior to move and grow into whatever it might be next. Maybe someone has a vision. I wrote a LinkedIn post recently about just the idea that sometimes starting with why is not
Yeah.
always possible for everybody. So
Yes.
for some, starting with why, and that's out there, popular business culture, and not to knock it because I do feel like I'm led in purpose and I have some whys in my life that do help to drive me. I love family and I sacrifice for family, and that changes what I do and also, therefore, why I do it too. However, for some, whether in the throes of addiction, whether just stuck, maybe it's a deep psychological depression that's real. And maybe some
Yes.
have been told, well, just get out of it. Stop doing that. Well, it's not as simple as
Right.
that. If they could, they would. I do firmly believe that we all do the best that we can with what we have. And ultimately, as one of my favorite authors said, we do the best that we can until we can do better. That's all
Yes.
blurry. You can't see it, but it's Maya Angelou, because then when we know better, we do better.
Yes.
And ultimately, starting with
It's a great
love, as you
quote.
said, and being lucid, having clear mindedness for me and for the many that I've worked with, that's essential. It's necessary. Starting with why is further off, that can be to
Yes.
come, but it's something to work towards.
Yeah, yeah. This it's interesting. So there's probably space for people to just live one day at a time, and that is the best they can do, and embrace that and celebrate that. And then you get to a place, sometimes other people help you. And it sounds like for you, Matt, other people had a vision for you, saw possibilities for you that you were just getting by day to day until you could embrace that. So let's talk about money. And I shared with you before we came on camera that I my goal was just to make enough so I didn't have to like worry about it because I really don't know what to do.
Mhm.
But there we've all had, well, not we've all, I guess some people are born into wealth, but many of us have had to like start at a place where we didn't have a lot, and then so for those people that have debt, right? They have debt. They're just making ends meet. What are some simple things we can say to them that will help them get to a better place financially? So you maybe it's college debt, maybe um, you bought a home and you can't sell it or whatever it is. What advice do we have for them to help them start chiseling away?
The first piece of advice might sound ambiguous to some, but my first piece of advice is to take the next best step. Sometimes when we think about debt and think about everything that we have to work through to reach our goals, it can become overwhelming. And if anybody that's listening is anything like me, you too may suffer from overthinking and procrastinating and getting stuck in cycles of that mindset of, I want to do this, but I'm stuck doing this. And it can be overwhelming sometimes.
Sure.
So for some, it may start with reaching out for help. and I recommend it. So for my career, and I know that was part of the question that I maybe went in a different direction, and people were like, "What's this guy talking about addiction?" I thought this was a financial conversation. They are related for sure. But I worked
Yes.
for 20 years for American Consumer Credit Counseling, and it is currently the Forbes #1 credit counseling agency in the country. It is a nonprofit, and you can receive free counseling. So for someone that's struggling with debt, trying to get out of debt, may not have a clear plan to get out of it, I would encourage getting help. And whether it's a nonprofit credit counseling agency, or if it's a trusted friend, advisor who is skilled in a particular area. And I'll provide that caveat. It's important. I have a 14-year-old son, and he likes to go to ChatGPT for all of his answers. And it confirms biases at the end of the day. So for him, he has many as a 14-year-old. He doesn't know who he is or where he's going, and identity is part of what he's figuring out. But he puts in the question and the prompt to get an answer for the bias that he has, which may not necessarily be his healthiest or best direction. And having someone who's skilled in the particular area that you're working towards is
Mm-hmm.
essential. So when it comes to finances, there's so much information, whether it's on TikTok or social media, other videos, so many answers that LLMs like ChatGPT or Perplexity or others can answer. It may or may
Yes.
not be in our best interest. It may or may not be practical. And some of the traditional financial model that is out there, some of it just frustrates me because at the end of
Mm.
the day, huge corporations do really well, and employees that work there may or may not do really well. Years ago, one was a client. And I won't get too deep into the details of that, but the reality is so many have credit card debt, and some of
Yes.
them work for professional financial services themselves. So someone who just says, "Hey, I'm a financial professional, trust everything that I say," or "do what I say, but not what I do," again, there's so many different theories, so much different advice that can go in different directions. And in my book, I continue to reiterate the importance of keeping it personal, because Teresa, what's best for you may not be best for me. What's best for me may not be best for
Right.
another listener. But it does come back to having a lucid assessment of our situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose I use that loosely, not knowing all the letters of all the acronym, but having a sober assessment and
Yes.
taking a look at all the debt, not just I need to pay that, because it becomes like financial whack-a-mole. I have
It
this credit
does.
card and it's an immediate payment, or if I don't make this payment, I'm going to get evicted, or if this payment's not made,
Right.
then they might repo my car. So let me go do that. And that's not a comprehensive plan. And as a result, oftentimes it costs a lot more money, but also stress and anxiety, which builds into things like high blood pressure and lack of sleep and more depression and all of those other things too. So having really a sober assessment on the entirety of the financial situation is important, not just a
Yeah.
single debt.
And it sounds like asking for help from someone who is skilled in this area. And what was the organization? Was it American Credit?
American Consumer Credit Counseling.
American Consumer Credit Counseling. So that's a place any of us could go and
Yes.
say, here's my situation. I'm $50,000 in debt. And what do I do? And somebody would help us.
Correct. So you can have a
Nice.
free budget counseling session. You can call and speak with a counselor, and they can take a look at whether you have debt or not and make some different recommendations. So that was part of, you asked earlier, part of my journey. So that was a big
Yes.
part of my journey. I started at 19. I had some credit card debt because I just needed like some stuff, like
Sure.
clothes to a shirt and a tie and
Absolutely.
stuff, and had some credit card debt. I didn't know how to manage my finances, but I received some different mentorship, and eventually, as a high school dropout, obtained my GED, took some college, became certified as a financial educator, credit counselor, and multiple other certifications, and was able to learn and grow with the organization. And the president who started the company kind of mentored me, and we would walk down the hall of the company. It was small at that time when I started in 1999. To give an idea of age and time frame, I was, I believe, the 24th employee. So I had opportunity to grow with the organization. And now the organization, as I mentioned, is the Forbes #1 credit counseling agency in the
Yeah.
country. But when I left there, just to be able to work on our emotional and spiritual needs as a dad and caregiver to my in-laws, we built an addition on our house 20 years ago. Um, the workload just wasn't viable, practical to continue. It was overwhelming, even though I loved that career. So it took me about 8 months to transition out of that. But now I serve on the board of directors of the organization. So I don't want it to be
Nice.
a plug about the organization. It is, again, nonprofit. But it provided me the opportunity to learn and grow, to get out there and interact with different people. And eventually I started the education outreach group, and we were able to do hundreds of workshops a year, but work with all different organizations, and working with people and seeing people from employee assistance programs to banks and financial services, and working with younger people as well, and becoming an advocate for financial education. In Massachusetts, I led other volunteers, and together we were able to bring some educational academic standards in K-12 in Massachusetts for financial literacy. It still isn't fantastic, and other states are well ahead of Massachusetts, but it's taking it one step at a time. Because in our
Yeah.
minds, whether it's advocating for financial education in schools or whether it's getting out of debt, for me, and quite possibly for others listening, we want it immediately. We live in a
I
world of
know.
instant gratification. I don't want
No.
to wait and go through these 50 other steps. But uh, when we think about a ladder and getting from where we are to where we want to go at the top of that ladder, if the rungs are spaced way too far apart, that's going to make our destination out of reach. When there's small practical steps that we
Yes.
can take, we can inch our way, or maybe 12-inch our way, all the way to the top to reach our goals. And it's important to think about those steps, not necessarily becoming overwhelmed with every step that we have to take. But that's where I mentioned the short, to some maybe ambiguous sounding, to take the next best step. And for
Yeah.
each of us, that's different. Maybe we have debt. Maybe we're working towards retirement, or maybe we're planning on having kids. It's different for each person. But for each one of us, asking for help and determining what the next best step is, so that, one, we build a vision of what our future could be, what we're working towards. Once we have stability in our lives. So for some, I mentioned that starting with why doesn't really work when we're in a survival mode.
Yes.
When we're just trying to
Absolutely.
get by, when we're trying to live the next day, starting with why isn't practical advice. If anything, it can be damaging. I mean, we've
Yes.
all heard, when it comes to money, don't spend more than you make. Well, if we just drop it at that, that's ridiculous. Everybody knows that.
Yes.
So difficult sometimes, depending on our circumstances, to actually live that. So working towards having a balanced budget again, and I know that dirty
Yeah.
B word, I mentioned it earlier with
But
the
it helps
slide.
you understand which
It
money, what's
does.
coming in, what's going out.
It
That's
does.
that's all budget is.
It's true.
I'm thinking of as you speak about like this whole thing with why that's become such a buzzword and it's powerful. But I think about Maslow's hierarchy, right?
Mhm.
So those of us that are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, and I've been teaching behavior, human behavior for years. Um, it's the bottom rung is just like oxygen, water, but like the basics that are needed. The next rung is safety, security. So you can't have people thinking about the top rung when they're worried about. We had a woman, one of the places that I worked, who was living in her car. She was living in her car. So, I could be in a classroom talking about, higher rungs on Maslow's hierarchy. She's not motivated by that. She's not motivated
Right.
because right now she just wants an apartment. That's it. So I'm hearing you, Matt, because I think when you are just looking for the basics, human needs, we can't be thinking about the top rungs.
No,
Yeah.
it's true.
It makes sense. One fine actually, I probably have time for 2 questions, but is there anything that you see us doing as a society on a grand scale that is just I don't want to say dumb because that's a harsh word, but misguided. Like, is there a misguided thing that you see that is prevalent that kind of gets us in trouble financially? I have a pet peeve of mine, but I am not in the same space as you. So I'm curious, Matt, what's your answer? What is a misguided thing that a lot of people are doing?
I don't know if we have time in 10 minutes to go there. This
There's a
gets
couple
into
pet
deeply
peeves.
philosophical
Yeah.
conversations about, I mean, one of the first things that comes to mind is education.
Oh,
So
dude, boom. That's exactly where I was going. Go ahead.
So because there's so much there with education. I mean, yeah, this is just the topic of education alone. We could spend hours and hours, and there's many
Yes.
podcasts dedicated to it and TED Talks galore. Um, I think that in many ways, our education system in the United States it's clear that we don't receive the academic outcomes that we desire, particularly for the money spent, as we see
Yes.
in some other countries. That's well known. That's well
Yes.
detailed documented. Um, I think that it's a challenge. My wife and I have learned about special education with our son, and it's a whole world in and of itself. But I know as a student who struggled and wasn't served as being in that majority middle,
Yeah.
school has a hard time helping those who would be considered on the fringes, and labels just get tricky and all of
Yes.
that, because what does that even mean? But I was a student who did not thrive in a traditional academic setting. I was a student who questioned authority, who questioned assumptions, and wanted to debate that in live time in the middle of a school session, and teachers
Yes.
were not fond of that. um, so I think that when it comes to life skills, they've been pushed out of school. So when we think about education, that's a really big topic. But when we think about economics and why we're having this conversation about money, um, too many schools really don't teach details about money management.
Right.
One part of that is because and this is just in my experience in teaching in a lot of schools and doing teacher trainings, but not every teacher feels comfortable having the conversation. If I'm a teacher in public school struggling with my personal finances and having a hard time making ends meet
Mm,
and putting food on my table,
right.
it's an uncomfortable and awkward conversation to bring up with other students.
Right.
However, at the same time, in many classrooms across the country, many students are the ones going home and helping their parents. I'll give one specific case in point. I was teaching a class. Lynn, Massachusetts is in northeastern Massachusetts. And there were they happened to be two particular eighth graders in one class that I was teaching who had parents at home that were not English speakers. And the students translated all of the mortgage documents for their parents and explained all of the mail that came in and all of these different ideas, thoughts, and
Yeah.
concepts. And I say ideas, thoughts, and concepts because it's not just what's written on the paper, but our system of finance, our economic system in the country is different from other countries. And we are a country of immigrants. My forefathers and mothers
Yes.
were not born on Massachusetts soil. They
Yes.
were born in Jamaica. They were born in France. They were born in England. And ultimately, as a country of immigrants, there's like the idea of different banking systems is beyond current academic standards. And teaching cultural nuances is critical when we talk about money, because in some countries, a system like a susu is what's used versus a traditional bank, because a traditional bank is corrupt and vile and will steal your money, and there's no recourse. So a
Mm,
susu, which is the community coming together to create savings and lending clubs, essentially to support through survival and economic mobility, is critical. So when we think about our academic systems in the country, things like home ec have been pushed out of many
yes.
schools. So how to
Right.
cook, how to clean, how to take care of ourselves, as which
Right.
includes
Civics
banking and
pushed
civics,
out.
it has by and large, because
Yeah.
one, it's not on standardized tests,
Yeah.
and teachers have a virtually impossible job. It's so challenging for my
I
friends who are
know.
teachers.
I know.
And I'm not saying that this burden needs to be on your shoulders. We're talking about systematic change that I
Yes.
see and have a
Absolutely.
need for change that irks me. Um, because there are so many demands put on our teachers in a given day, and much of it even comes down just to managing the classroom and hope that nobody gets hurt and just safety. And we go back to Maslow's hierarchy and thinking about that personal safety. And I have friends who are teachers that have been attacked at school,
Yeah.
and it's challenging. So when we think about systemic need for change, education
Education.
is
It starts
critical.
there. It's on my list of pet peeves. That's why I high-fived you, because that is definitely a need. So with a little bit of time left, what's next for you, Matt? What's coming up for you that we should be excited about or you're excited about?
I'm exciting about helping people. So my purpose is to be able to serve others with the best of what I have. And I do that with speaking. I do that at getting on stages and working with different employers to help their employees have less financial stress so that they can be more productive. It affects the bottom line. So when we think even about systemic change, education, academics, that's important within the workforce. Thinking about empowering employees, helping equip employees to be financially well isn't just a
Yes.
nice to have. It's a matter of strong, capable leadership that really does provide an environment of productivity for the company, even if
Awesome.
in self-interest for the company. But ultimately, many employers that I work with directly, the people want the best for their employees. They want them to be well at home and well at work.
Yeah.
And having programs like financial wellness programs is vital to that.
Nice. Nice. Well, Matt, thank you for the conversation. I hope you'll hang on. We have an after party, and I know Lysandra can't hang for our after party today, but the after party is where you and I just have a couple minutes to debrief, and if the audience hangs on, they get to hear our debrief as well. But I'm going to click on end our recording so that we can begin the after party. And so it
Hey,
begins.
thanks,
So
Lysandra. I appreciate you. Thanks for being here. It's a
yeah,
pleasure to connect
jump on
with you.
screen before you leave.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, lots to think about.
Lots to noodle on. Oh my goodness.
Lots to
Or
think.
noodle on, like lots to digest.
So I put my lucid model, and I'm sharing this probably for the first time outside my
Hmm.
little circle of people. But lucid started because um people asked me, why do you not drink? And I do.
Hmm.
Like if you offered me a pina colada,
Uh-huh.
dude, I'm taking it. Like I like a nice frozen drink. So it's not that I don't drink, but I don't often drink. And it's
Hmm.
not like a focal point of my, and they ask me why. And I would always say I really like to be lucid.
Hmm.
I enjoy being lucid. And it almost was like the universe was talking to me, because lucid um is deeper than just not drinking or not
Hmm.
smoking pot. It is at my core. And I had came up with this model of love, understanding, clarity, intuition, and discernment. And I
Hmm.
think it carries over to all parts of our lives. And so there's a book there and there's a keynote there that has not yet been written. But dude,
I
I'm
love that.
working on it.
I love that.
So there you go.
So when you say you're working on the book, is that actively working on it? Is that
Yes.
nice?
Yes.
So
So
is
I
that I know you
That's not
mentioned
the one
earlier.
coming up in September. The one coming up
Okay.
in September is something that I do all the time as a labor of love. And I
Hmm.
thought I need to just put this in a book and say, gang, just read the book.
Hmm.
Just read the book, which is managing your career for a lifetime,
Okay.
like holistically managing. So that's coming out in
Yeah.
September. But this weaves into my corporate work. It weaves into leadership. It weaves into organizational culture. But it also is a personal
Hmm.
thing. So you and I, there's definitely a lot of resonance in how we, our life purpose and what we're trying to do and all of that. So I really appreciated hearing your story.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you for the
Yeah.
opportunity to share some of it. And I love that lucid model and some of the philosophy that you live by too. It's yeah,
It's
it's an interesting one, I think. It definitely also seems more and more younger generations now are getting away from drinking. Well, not seen. I mean,
Great.
some data
It's
shows it.
not what it was, which
Yeah.
is awesome. I may have, I'm going to recommend you to a client who espouses your passion for employees should feel whole and should
Mhm.
understand and have an opportunity. So I will plant a seed for you that may lead
Thanks.
to paid work. They have conferences that they bring in speakers, and I think you would be a good fit. So hopefully you'll get some Monet.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. It is. I think it's interesting where I've wrestled, and when I say wrestled, I mean I've gone back and forth even with different presentations and things like